They say lightning never strikes twice, but betrayal? Betrayal has a way of finding you exactly when you think you're safe. My wife Desdemona didn't just cheat on me with my business partner Caspian once. She did it twice. And the second time it cost me everything I'd built over 15 years. My tech company, my fortune, my reputation, even my will to live. I lost it all in one devastating night that should have destroyed me forever. But here's what they didn't know about me. I don't stay down. When fate gave me an impossible second chance, I didn't waste it on revenge. I did something far more satisfying. I let them steal my company, watched them start their own empire, and then systematically orchestrated the most beautiful business failure you've ever seen. This is the story of how two backstabbers learned that karma has a name, and sometimes that name is mine. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 15 years? That's how long Caspian Wild and I, Zephyr Sterling, had been building our empire together. We'd started Nexus Digital Solutions in a cramped basement in downtown Ashford Valley. Two college friends with nothing but ambition and a shared vision of revolutionizing small business software. Now, we owned a gleaming corporate headquarters, overlooking Crystal Bay, employed over 200 people. We're on the verge of our biggest breakthrough yet. Caspian handled the technical architecture, while I managed business development and client relations. We were the perfect complement. His brilliant coding mind paired with my strategic vision and people skills, our software suite had transformed thousands of small businesses across 3 states. And we were about to launch our cloud-based platform that would take us national. But the real jewel in my life wasn't the business. It was Desdemona, my wife of 12 years, the woman I'd met at a tech conference in Harbor Springs, the same week Caspian and I signed our first major client. She was working for a competing firm then, a marketing strategist with an infectious laugh and eyes that could see right through any pretense. When she left her job to become Nexus Digital's head of marketing 3 years later, it felt like all the pieces of my perfect life had finally clicked into place. We were the power couple of Ashford Valley's tech scene. Desdemona's marketing campaigns were legendary. She could make our most complex software sound like poetry to potential clients. Our dinner parties were the stuff of local legend, bringing together investors, tech leaders, and creative minds in our sprawling home in Millbrook Heights. We were profiled in Valley Business Weekly as the dynamic duo reshaping regional tech. Should have seen the signs. Looking back, they were all there, glaring at me like neon warnings. I was too blind to notice. The late-night emergency. Meetings between Desdemona and Caspian that started about 8 months ago. She'd get calls at 10 p.m. about critical campaign deadlines or server issues affecting marketing data. I'd find them huddled over laptops in the conference room, speaking in hushed tones that stopped the moment I walked in. Just brainstorming. The Morrison Industries presentation, Desdemona would say, with that perfect smile. You know how detail-oriented Day is? Caspian would add, not quite meeting my eyes. She wants everything flawless for the launch. Then there were the client dinners that seemed to require both of them, but never me. Technical integration meetings, they called them. It's too boring for the business development guy, apparently. I'd stay home working on proposals and investor presentations. Proud of how dedicated my wife and business partner were to our shared success, the biggest red flag should have been Desdemona's sudden interest in our company's financial structure. She'd always left the business side to Caspian and me, focusing purely on marketing strategy. But lately, she'd been asking detailed questions about equity distribution, investor agreements, and intellectual property ownership. I just want to understand our position better, she'd explain when I'd look surprised by her questions. For the marketing angles. Investors love hearing about solid corporate foundations. I was proud of her growing business acumen. She was becoming an even more valuable partner in our empire building. I was such an idiot. The night everything shattered was supposed to be our celebration dinner. We'd just closed the Meridian Systems deal, a $3 million contract that would fund our national expansion. I'd booked a private dining room at Azure, the most exclusive restaurant in Harbor Springs, to toast our future with champagne and plans for the next phase of growth. I arrived early. wanting everything perfect for what I thought would be one of the most important nights of our professional lives. The Mater D led me through the main dining room toward our reserved space, and that's when I saw them. Caspian and Desdemona were at a corner table in the main restaurant. They definitely weren't discussing quarterly projections. His hand was covering hers across the table. She was leaning into him with a look I recognized, because she used to look at me that way. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice me standing there, watching my marriage and my business partnership disintegrate in real time. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was seeing. Then Caspian leaned across the table and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, not a celebratory gesture. A deep, intimate kiss between two people who were clearly far more than colleagues, far more than friends. The kiss of two people who'd been lying to me for months. I turned and walked out before they saw me. Drove home in a daze, my mind racing through every late meeting, every hushed conversation. Every time they'd exchanged glances, I'd dismissed as professional teamwork. I sat in our living room, the one Desdemona had decorated with such care, filled with photos of our happy life together, and waited for her to come home. When she finally did, 3 hours later, her lips were still swollen, and her hair slightly messed despite her attempts to fix it. "How was the client dinner?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Oh, it went really well," she said. "Not quite." Looking at me, "You think Meridian is going to be a game changer for our Q4 numbers?" She was lying to my face with the same smile she'd given me that morning when she'd kissed me goodbye. That's when I knew this wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated betrayal by the two people I trusted most in the world. Had the terrible feeling that stealing my wife wasn't the only thing Caspian had in mind. I had no idea that within 72 hours, they wouldn't just destroy my marriage, they'd steal my entire life's work and leave me with nothing but bankruptcy, papers, and a shattered sense of reality. But what they didn't know about me was that sometimes, when you lose everything, you discover exactly who you really are underneath all the trust and naivety. And the man they were about to meet was someone neither of them had ever seen before. Last time, I showed you how I discovered my wife's Desdemona and business partner Caspian were having an affair behind my back. I thought that was the worst betrayal possible. I was wrong. Today, I'll tell you about the 48 hours that didn't just destroy my marriage. They obliterated my entire existence. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that kiss, that intimate look between them. Lay there in bed next to Desdemona, listening to her breathe, wondering how long she'd been lying next to me while thinking about him. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee, kissed my cheek, asked about my schedule. The normalcy of it was suffocating. I watched her perform the routine of being my wife while knowing she was planning something with Caspian. I could see it in her eyes, a kind of calculating distance that made my skin crawl. "Don't forget, we have the Meridian presentation this afternoon," she said, straightening my tie like she had 1,000 times before. This could change everything for us. She had no idea how right she was. I arrived at the office that morning, trying to act normal, but everything felt different. The building I'd helped design, the company logo I'd helped create, the employees I'd helped hire, it all felt foreign, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. Caspian was already in his office, and when I knocked, he looked up with that same friendly smile he'd worn for 15 years. No guilt, no shame, no acknowledgement of what I'd witnessed the night before. "Zephyr, ready for the big day? This Meridian deal is going to set us up perfectly for the national launch." I studied his face, looking for any crack in the facade. Nothing. He was either a sociopath or the best actor I'd ever met. "Actually, I wanted to go over the financial projections one more time before the presentation," I said. "Make sure we're on the same page about equity distribution and revenue sharing." Something flickered in his eyes. "Of course. But maybe we should wait until after Meridian. Don't want to complicate things before such a crucial meeting." That's when I knew. Whatever. They were planning. It was happening today. The Meridian presentation was flawless. Desdemona's marketing pitch was brilliant. Caspian's technical demonstration was seamless. and my business development strategy sealed the deal. $3 million, just like that. The biggest contract in Nexus Digital's history. The Meridian executives shook our hands, talked about the bright future ahead, promised the signed contracts by end of business. I should have been elated. Instead, I felt like I was watching my own funeral. After they left, Caspian suggested we celebrate with an early lunch. Just the core team, he said. You, me, and Day. Like the old days. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We went to Thornfield Bistro, a quiet place in Millbrook Heights where we'd made some of our most important business decisions over the years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Halfway through lunch, Caspian's phone rang. Sorry, I have to take this. Emergency server issue. He stepped outside, and that's when Desdemona finally dropped the mask. I need you to know this wasn't how I wanted. It too happened, she said, her voice soft but resolute. What wasn't how you wanted it to happen? Caspian and I. We're leaving Nexus Digital. Together, we're starting our own company. I stared at her, my mind trying to process what she'd just said. You're what? We've been planning this for months. We have investors lined up, office space secured, and she paused. And for the first time, she looked almost sorry. We're taking the Meridian contract with us? You can't take Meridian. That's our contract. Nexus Digital's contract. She pulled out a folder from her purse. Actually, according to the paperwork Meridian signed this morning, the contract is with Sterling Wild Solutions, our new company. Caspian filed the business registration last week. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. That's impossible. They met with Nexus Digital, our presentation, our office, our presentation materials. Yes. But the actual business entity they contracted with, that was Sterling Wild. Small clerical distinction that Meridian's legal team didn't catch. The sophistication of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a spur-of-a-moment betrayal. This was a calculated heist, months in the making. And that's not all, she continued, her voice getting steadier, more businesslike. Caspian controls the intellectual property rights to the core software, architecture. He built it. He owns it. Without that code, Nexus Digital is just an empty shell. We built that together. 15 years of you handling business development while he did the actual creating. Check your partnership agreement, Zephyr. The technical assets belong to whoever developed them. Caspian returned to the table, his fake emergency call complete. He sat down and looked at me with something that might have been pity. I'm sorry. It has to be this way, he said. But Desdemona and I, we're a team now, ever since. And we think we can build something bigger without, he gestured vaguely at me. Without the complications? I sat there in stunned silence as they laid out the rest of their plan. They were taking not just Meridian, but 3 other major clients, who had primarily interfaced with Desdemona's marketing team. They were taking our head developer and 2 senior programmers who had been secretly recruited over the past month. They were taking our biggest competitive advantage and our most valuable relationships. What they were leaving me with was the office lease, the outstanding debts, a handful of smaller clients, and employees who would quit the moment they realized the company was effectively bankrupt. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow, Desdemona added, almost as an afterthought. My lawyer says it should be fairly straightforward since I'm not asking for anything from our personal assets. I'm taking my shares in Nexus Digital, of course, but you can keep the house. The house. They were leaving me with a house I couldn't afford and a company that would be worthless within a month. I don't remember how I got home that night. I don't remember the drive or unlocking the door or walking through the rooms that had contained my entire life just 24 hours earlier. What I remember is sitting on the floor of my empty office at home, surrounded by 15 years of business, awards and achievement plaques, calling my lawyer and my accountant, and discovering just how thorough their planning had been. Everything was legal. Every document was properly filed. Every contract was ironclad. They hadn't just stolen my business and my wife, they'd done it so skillfully that I had no legal recourse whatsoever by the end of the week. Digital was hemorrhaging money, Employees were quitting, clients were terminating contracts, and vendors were demanding payment on accounts that Caspian and Desdemona had strategically left unpaid. I lost the business. I lost the house. I lost my savings fighting legal battles I couldn't win. Within 3 months, I was living in a studio apartment in Copper Ridge, working customer service for a software company that used to be our competitor. I should have been. Broken. Any reasonable person would have been destroyed by what they'd done to me. But sitting in that cramped apartment one night, eating ramen noodles and watching news coverage of Sterling Wild Solutions' meteoric rise in the tech world, something inside me shifted. They'd taken everything from me because they thought I was weak. They thought I was just the business guy who couldn't create anything without them. They had no idea that losing everything was about to teach me exactly what I was capable of when I had nothing left to lose. What Caspian and Desdemona didn't realize was that they just handed me the greatest gift possible: complete freedom. No relationships to protect, no reputation to maintain, no assets to preserve. I was about to discover that sometimes, when you lose everything, you finally learn how to win. I'd lost everything: my business, my wife, my fortune, my entire identity. Caspian and Desdemona had executed the perfect heist, leaving me with nothing but a studio apartment and a customer service job. But what they didn't realize was that they'd just freed me from every constraint that had been holding me back. Today I'll show you how I turned complete devastation into the foundation for their destruction. The turning point came on a Tuesday night in February, exactly 6 months after my world collapsed. I was sitting in my tiny apartment in Copper Ridge, eating another microwave dinner while scrolling through industry news, when I saw the headline that changed everything: Sterling Wild Solutions secures $15 million Series A funding round. There was Caspian, grinning in a photo outside some gleaming downtown office building, with Desdemona beside him, looking every inch the successful executive. The article gushed about their innovative approach to enterprise software and their rapid market expansion. My software, my clients. My 15 years of relationship building. They were getting rich and famous off everything I'd created, and the tech world was celebrating them as visionary entrepreneurs. But as I read deeper into the article, something clicked. For the first time in months, I wasn't reading as Zephyr, Sterling, the defeated victim. I was reading as someone else entirely, someone who understood business strategy, market dynamics, and competitive intelligence. And what I saw wasn't a success story. It was a house of cards built on a foundation they didn't understand. The next morning, I called in sick to my customer service job and spent the entire day doing something I should have done months earlier. I investigated Sterling Wild Solutions, like I was planning a hostile takeover. What I discovered was fascinating. Caspian was brilliant at coding, but he'd never actually run a business before. Every strategic decision at Nexus Digital had been mine: client relationships, investor relations, operational systems, financial planning. He'd been the technical genius. I'd been the business architect. Desdemona was a marketing wizard, but her expertise was in promoting established products to existing markets. She'd never built a brand from scratch or navigated the complex challenges of scaling a startup. They'd stolen my clients and my code, but they hadn't stolen my knowledge. And without that knowledge, they were making mistakes, expensive, fundamental mistakes that would eventually destroy them, but eventually wasn't good enough. I wanted to accelerate their timeline. I spent the next 3 weeks studying everything about their operation. I analyzed their public filings, tracked their employee hiring patterns, identified their key investors, and mapped their competitive positioning. I was building a complete intelligence profile on Sterling Wild Solutions. What I found was even better than I'd hoped: their $15 million funding round had come with brutal terms. The investors, led by Cromwell Venture Partners, had demanded aggressive growth targets and rapid market expansion. Sterling Wild had 18 months to triple their revenue or face a devastating down round that would dilute Caspian and Desdemona's ownership to almost nothing. They were burning through cash at an unsustainable rate, trying to hire enough talent to deliver on contracts they'd oversold. Their technical infrastructure was showing strain because Caspian had designed it for the smaller scale. Nexus Digital operated at not the enterprise-level demands Sterling Wild was facing. Most critically, they're about to lose their biggest competitive advantage: the exclusivity arrangements I'd negotiated with our key technology partners. Those contracts were coming up for renewal. The partners were already expressing concerns about Sterling Wild's ability to deliver on the expanded scope. But information was only the first step. If I wanted to beat them, I needed to become someone they couldn't ignore or dismiss. I quit the customer service job and spent my remaining savings on something that would have seemed insane 6 months earlier. I enrolled in an intensive MBA program at Beacon Hills University, specifically focused on technology entrepreneurship and venture capital. But this wasn't about getting a degree. This was about accessing the network, the knowledge, and the credibility I'd need for what I was planning. While studying during the day, spent my nights building something new. I started Phoenix Strategic Consulting, a boutique firm specializing in helping technology companies optimize their operations and scale efficiently. My first client was a struggling software startup in nearby Westport that needed exactly the kind of strategic guidance I'd been providing to Nexus Digital for 15 years. Within 3 months, I'd turned their operation around so dramatically that they referred me to 2 other companies. Then those companies referred me to others. I wasn't just rebuilding my reputation. I was establishing myself as the go-to expert for exactly the kind of challenges Sterling Wild was facing. But the real breakthrough came when I met Dr. Evelyn Cross, a venture capitalist and former tech CEO who taught corporate strategy in the MBA program. During office hours, I mentioned my interest in enterprise software markets, and she started sharing insights about the challenges facing high-growth startups. The most common failure pattern, she said, is companies that scale too fast without building proper operational foundations. They get early wins based on superior products or relationships, but they can't sustain the growth because they don't understand the systems required. What usually triggers the collapse? I asked. Partner defections. When your key relationships realize you can't deliver on your promises, they start looking for alternatives. And once one major partner jumps ship, the others follow like dominoes. When I knew exactly how to destroy Sterling Wild Solutions, I didn't need to attack them directly. I didn't need to expose their theft or wage a legal battle I couldn't win. I just needed to position myself as the alternative when their inevitable operational failures became too obvious to ignore. Over the following months, I systematically built relationships with every technology partner that Sterling Wild depended on. I attended the same industry conferences, joined the same professional organizations, and slowly but carefully established myself as a respected voice in the enterprise software community. I helped Nexus Digital's former partners solve integration challenges that Sterling Wild couldn't address. I provided strategic guidance that demonstrated the depth of knowledge Caspian and Desdemona were lacking. I became the expert they turned to when Sterling Wild's solutions weren't working. But I never mentioned Sterling Wild directly, never criticized them, never appeared to compete with them. I just quietly, professionally, systematically became everything they weren't: reliable, knowledgeable, focused on sustainable growth rather than flashy expansion. By the end of my first year in the MBA program, Phoenix Strategic had grown into a legitimate consulting firm with 12 clients and a waiting list. Dr. Cross had introduced me to her venture capital network, where I was building relationships with exactly the kind of investors who would matter when Sterling Wild's house of cards finally collapsed. But the most satisfying part was watching Sterling Wild's quarterly reports and seeing exactly the problems I'd predicted starting to emerge. Their customer acquisition costs were skyrocketing. Their technical infrastructure was buckling under scale. Their key partnerships were showing strain. Caspian and Desdemona had no idea that the man they'd destroyed was systematically positioning himself to benefit from their inevitable implosion. They thought they'd won. They thought I was gone, forgotten, irrelevant. They had no idea I was about to become their worst nightmare, because while they'd been playing startup founder, I'd been learning how to play a much more sophisticated game, and I was about to start making my moves It's been over a year rebuilding myself from the ashes of Caspian and Desdemona's betrayal. While they celebrated their stolen success, I was quietly becoming everything they weren't: strategic, reliable, and deeply connected to the industry they thought they owned. Now it was time to put my plan into action, and they wouldn't even see me coming. The first domino fell on a Thursday morning in September, 18 months after Sterling Wild had stolen my life. I was in my new Phoenix strategic offices in downtown Ashford Valley, just 6 blocks from where Nexus Digital used to be, when my assistant buzzed me with a call that would begin their unraveling. "Mr. Sterling, this is James Morrison from Morrison Tech Solutions. We've been having some ... integration issues with our current software provider, and your name came up as someone who might be able to help." Morrison Tech, one of Sterling Wild's biggest clients, worth over $800,000 annually. The same Morrison Industries that had been part of my final presentation at Nexus Digital before everything collapsed. "What kind of integration issues are you experiencing?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well, when we expanded our operations to the East Coast, the system started having performance problems. Lag times, data sync issues, occasional crashes during peak usage. Our current provider keeps saying they're working on it, but it's been 3 months now, and our productivity is suffering." I scheduled a consultation for the following week, but I already knew exactly what I'd find. Caspian had built Sterling Wild's architecture for mid-size operations, not enterprise-scale deployments. The codebase I'd helped strategize at Nexus Digital had been designed with scalability in mind. Caspian had rushed the Sterling Wild version to market without proper load testing or infrastructure planning. The consultation confirmed everything. Morrison's East Coast expansion had pushed Sterling Wild's software beyond its capacity limits. Worse, the fixes Sterling Wild had implemented were band-aids that created new vulnerabilities in the system. "Can you solve this?" After I'd explained the technical challenges, "Yes," I said, "but it would require rebuilding the core architecture with proper scalability frameworks. It's not a quick fix, it's a fundamental redesign." "How long would that take?" "For Phoenix Strategic to design and oversee implementation." "For months? For your current provider to build it properly?" I paused, assuming they have the expertise, which, based on what I've seen, they don't, probably never. Morrison terminated their Sterling Wild contract 2 weeks later, but I wasn't done with just one client. I'd spent the past year building relationships with every technology partner in Sterling Wild's ecosystem, and I was about to activate those relationships systematically. Phase 2. The partner network activation data stream analytics had been providing Sterling Wild with their business intelligence integration for over a year. It was a crucial partnership that enabled Sterling Wild to offer comprehensive reporting features to their clients. But DataStream's contract was up for renewal, and their CEO, Linda Hurst, had been increasingly frustrated with Sterling Wild's technical limitations. I'd been consulting with DataStream for 6 months, helping them optimize their own client integration processes. During our regular strategy sessions, Linda would often mention challenges with their enterprise software partners. The problem, she told me during one of our meetings, is that these newer companies promise enterprise-scale solutions, but they don't really understand enterprise-scale problems. They build for small business and try to scale up, instead of building enterprise-class architecture from the ground up. "Have you considered working with partners who have more mature technical foundations?" I asked. "We're always open to better partnerships. Do you know anyone?" Instead of pitching Phoenix Strategic directly, I connected DataStream with 2 of my MBA program classmates who'd launched their own enterprise software companies with proper venture backing and seasoned technical teams. Companies that understood scalability because they'd built for it from day one. Within 3 weeks, DataStream had signed exclusive integration agreements with my recommendations, making Sterling Wild's business intelligence features obsolete. Phase 3. The investment community intelligence through Dr. Cross's venture capital network. I'd gained access to a level of industry intelligence that Caspian and Desdemona couldn't even imagine. I knew which investors were concerned about their portfolio companies, which deals were struggling, and which firms were looking for new opportunities in the enterprise software space. More importantly, I knew that Cromwell Venture Partners, Sterling Wild's lead investor, was getting nervous. During a venture capital networking event at the Harbor Springs Business Center, I found myself in conversation with Michael Cromwell himself. I'd been introduced as the Phoenix strategic founder who's been helping several of our portfolio companies optimize their operations. Sterling Wild Solutions, Cromwell said when I mentioned my focus on enterprise software scaling challenges. You know them? They're in our portfolio? I'm familiar with their market position, I said carefully. Interesting growth trajectory. Challenging is more like it. They're burning cash faster than projected, and they've had some client retention issues lately. Their technical team seems to be struggling with scale. I nodded sympathetically. It's a common problem with companies that grow too fast. Sometimes the technical architecture that got you to Series A isn't the architecture that gets you to profitability. Exactly. You think there's anything that could help them? Instead of offering to consult for Sterling Wild directly, which would have been too obvious, I planted a different seed. In my experience, companies in that situation need either a fundamental technical overhaul, which is expensive and time-consuming, or they need to find strategic partnerships that can offset their scaling limitations. The companies that survive usually find ways to leverage external expertise instead of trying to build everything in-house. 2 weeks later, I learned through Dr. Cross that Cromwell had hired an independent technical audit firm to assess Sterling Wild's scalability challenges. The same firm that had evaluated 3 of my Phoenix strategic clients and found their systems exceptionally well-architected for sustainable growth. Phase 4. The ecosystem collapsed by November. Sterling Wild was hemorrhaging partners and clients faster than they could replace them. Morrison Tech had been just the beginning. 3 more major clients had terminated contracts due to performance issues. DataStream's departure had forced them to rebuild their business intelligence features from scratch, causing delays that triggered penalty clauses in 2 other client agreements. But the real damage was in their reputation. In the tight-knit enterprise software community, word travels fast. Project managers talk to each other at conferences. Technical directors share war stories during industry meets. CTOs compare notes about vendor reliability during golf games. Sterling Wild was becoming known as the company that promised enterprise solutions but delivered startup quality infrastructure. They were the cautionary tale other executives referenced when discussing vendor selection. Meanwhile, Phoenix Strategic was experiencing explosive growth. We'd gone from 12 clients to 38 in 6 months. I'd hired 4 additional consultants and was fielding calls from companies I'd never heard of, all referred by satisfied clients who'd seen dramatic improvements in their operations. Dr. Cross had introduced me to 3 different venture capital firms that were interested in providing growth funding for Phoenix Strategic's expansion. I was being invited to speak at industry conferences about sustainable scaling strategies for enterprise software. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. While Sterling Wild was struggling to retain clients and manage operational crises, I was building the kind of strategic consulting firm that enterprise software companies desperately needed. The final setup in December, exactly 2 years after Caspian and Desdemona had destroyed my life. I received the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Sterling, this is Rebecca Chen from Meridian Systems. I believe you're familiar with our company, Meridian Systems? The $3 million client that had been the crown jewel of Sterling Wild's stolen empire. We're having some challenges. With our current software implementation, Rebecca continued, significant challenges. And your name has come up repeatedly as someone who might be able to help us find a solution. What kind of challenges are you experiencing? System failures, integration problems, data integrity issues, basically? Everything is falling apart, and our current provider seems unable to fix any of it. We're hemorrhaging productivity, and frankly, we're starting to question whether we made the right choice 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when Caspian and Desdemona had redirected the Meridian contract to Sterling Wild through legal trickery, I'd be happy to conduct a comprehensive assessment, I said. When would work for a consultation? As I hung up the phone, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any revenge fantasy could provide. I hadn't attacked Sterling Wild directly. I hadn't sabotaged them or engaged in corporate warfare. I'd simply built something better, positioned myself strategically, let their own limitations destroy them from within. Caspian and Desdemona had thought they were stealing my future. Instead, they'd forced me to build an empire that was about to reclaim everything they'd taken and more. The final confrontation was coming. This time I held all the cards. Sterling Wilde was collapsing exactly as I'd predicted. Their clients were fleeing, their partnerships were dissolving, and their investors were losing confidence. But I wanted them to know who was responsible for their downfall. The time had come for the confrontation I'd been planning for 2 years. The call came on a Wednesday morning in January. Not from a potential client this time, but from someone I'd been expecting to hear from eventually. Zephyr. The voice was strained, desperate. It's Caspian. We need to talk. I let the silence stretch for a long moment, savoring the desperation in his voice. About what? You know exactly what. Can you meet us at Thornfield Bistro? Today at noon? Thornfield Bistro. It's the same place where they'd first revealed their betrayal to me 2.5 years ago. The irony was perfect. I'll be there. I arrived. They were already seated at the same corner table where they'd destroyed my life. But everything else had changed. Caspian looked exhausted, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Desdemona sat rigidly beside him, her perfect composure cracked around the edges. I took my time walking over, noting how they both tracked my movement with the intensity of prey animals watching a predator. You look well, Desdemona said, as I sat down, her voice tight. Business has been good, I replied calmly. Phoenix Strategic is expanding faster than we can hire consultants. Caspian leaned forward, his eyes searching my face. Morrison Tech, Data Stream Analytics. 3 other major clients. They all terminated contracts with us and went to companies you recommended. Did they? I wasn't aware you were tracking my client referrals. Cut the act, Zephyr, Desdemona snapped. We know what you're doing. I smiled, the same cold, calculated smile I'd perfected over months of planning. What exactly am I doing? Sabotaging us. Caspian's voice rose slightly before he caught himself. You're systematically destroying our partnerships, poisoning our reputation, turning our investors against us. That's interesting, I said, pulling out my phone and opening my notes app. Can you point to a single instance where I've said anything negative about Sterling Wilde? A single conversation where I've criticized your work or advised anyone against doing business with you? They stared at me, realizing they had nothing. 'Cause here's what actually happened, I continued, my voice remaining perfectly level. Morrison Tech called me because your software couldn't handle their East Coast expansion. DataStream left because you couldn't provide enterprise-scale integration. Your other clients departed because you promised capabilities you couldn't deliver. You orchestrated all of it, Desdemona accused. I built something better, I corrected. While you were celebrating your stolen success, I was learning how to actually run an enterprise software business. While you were burning through investor money, I was building sustainable client relationships. While you were struggling with problems you didn't understand, I was becoming the solution. Caspian's hands were shaking. We can work something out. A partnership, maybe. Combine our technical assets with your operational expertise. I almost laughed. You want to partner with me? After you stole my company, my clients, my wife, and left me with nothing? That was business, Desdemona said weakly. No, I said, my voice hardening. That was theft. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to become someone neither of you could ever defeat. I stood up, looking down at them with something that might have been pity. Sterling Wilde Solutions will be bankrupt. Within 3 months, Cromwell Venture Partners is already preparing to cut their losses. Your remaining clients are shopping for alternatives. And Meridian Systems' your crown jewel called me yesterday, asking for a complete system replacement. Their faces went white. But here's the beautiful part, I continued. I didn't destroy you, you destroyed yourselves. I just built something better and waited for your incompetence to drive everyone to me. Caspian looked broken. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said, my voice final. I already have everything I want. Phoenix Strategic is valued at $12 million. I'm being courted by venture capital firms across 3 states. In 6 months, When Sterling Wild is just a cautionary tale, I'll be the industry expert everyone calls when they want. To avoid making your mistakes, I walked toward the exit, then turned back one final time. You thought you were stealing my future? Instead, you handed me the greatest gift possible, the motivation to build something you could never touch, steal, or destroy. As I left them sitting there in the ruins of their arrogance, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but peace. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, the justice was perfect. They'd gotten exactly what they deserved, and I'd become exactly who I was meant to be. I'd confronted Caspian and Desdemona at the same table where they'd destroyed my life. But this time I held all the power. Sterling Wild was collapsing, Phoenix Strategic was thriving, and justice had been served. But the most important part of my story wasn't the revenge. It was what I built from the ashes of their betrayal. Sterling Wild Solutions filed for bankruptcy 3 months later, exactly as I'd predicted. Cromwell Venture Partners wrote off their entire investment. The final blow came when their remaining technical team quit en masse after 2 months of unpaid salaries. Caspian tried to rebuild his career as a freelance developer, but his reputation in the enterprise software world was finished. No serious company would risk hiring someone associated with Sterling Wild's spectacular failure. Desdemona disappeared from the tech industry entirely. Last I heard, she was working in real estate in some suburb outside Harbor Springs, a far cry from the executive lifestyle she'd thought she was stealing from me. But their fate wasn't what mattered to me anymore. What mattered was what I had become in the process of defeating them. Phoenix Strategic evolved far beyond anything I'd imagined when I started it in that tiny studio apartment. We now employ 47 consultants across 5 states with offices in Ashford Valley, Harbor Springs, and Westport. We've helped over 200 companies optimize their operations and scale sustainably. More importantly, we've become the gold standard for ethical business practices in the enterprise software consulting space. Every Phoenix strategic engagement includes knowledge transfer protocols, ensuring our clients truly understand their systems rather than remaining dependent on external consultants. The venture capital funding I'd initially declined came back. Around with better terms and strategic partnerships, Dr. Cross joined our advisory board, bringing connections that opened doors I never could have accessed alone. But the real victory wasn't financial, it was personal. The man who walked out of that Thornfield Bistro meeting 2.5 years ago was naive, trusting, and vulnerable to betrayal. The man I became was someone who could build systems that couldn't be stolen, relationships that couldn't be corrupted, and success that couldn't be undermined. I learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful that your betrayers become irrelevant. Caspian and Desdemona thought they were ending my story. Instead, they forced me to write a better one, today. When young entrepreneurs ask me about partnerships and trust, I tell them this: protect what you build, but don't let paranoia paralyze you. The goal isn't to become invulnerable, it's to become antifragile. Build something so strong, so well architected, so ethically grounded, that even if someone tries to destroy it, you'll emerge stronger than before. Caspian and Desdemona gave me the greatest gift possible. They showed me exactly who I could become when I had nothing left to lose. The Phoenix strategic empire isn't just built on business acumen. It's built on the resilience that comes from surviving complete devastation and choosing to rise instead of remain bitter. They thought they were stealing my future. Instead, they handed me the keys to a future I never could have imagined. And that future is just beginning. Up next, we've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.